There seems to be little doubt at this point that blockchain technology is part of our society's wider technological future. The questions then are, how are we going to use it? How is it going to benefit us? And what is adoption going to look like? Today we have with us Nicolas Moore from utility.ai to help try and answer some of those questions. We dive deep into NFT utility and how it creates deeper user engagement, how we drive adoption, and how it all starts with providing developers the right tooling to make it all happen. Let's get to it.
Prior to starting this business, I was working at Amazon Web Services. I was managing about a $500 million business unit, which sounds really cool, but is not. About 75 internal resources, and my job became, writing essays and reporting the news up the Amazon management chain. Pre that, Seattle local, Seattle cliche, right? Born here, raised here, went to University of Washington, got rained on my whole life, and then went to work for Jeff. So I think it's a story a lot of people have heard. We got started with utility back in around this time last year, actually. The original idea was, hey, let's build a Web3 layer that is performant and invisible enough to onboard Minecraft teenagers with 5-second attention spans into a Web3 world, right? Fading all the technology into the background and leaving behind just the benefits of digital asset ownership, such that a mainstream user who has no crypto familiarity could actually engage with it, right? Took a few months for us to realize that Minecraft metaverse probably wasn't going to work, but the tech we had built, most of the team is big tech alums like me, and the tech we had built was performant and useful enough in the market that we could be supporting other people who actually knew how to design games, digital loyalty programs, things like that, as opposed to designing them ourselves. And so that was the genesis of utility. Everybody quit their jobs and started to build this software platform where now we're in a position to start to publicly release it here in the next couple months. It took longer than expected, and famous last words for any startup, we built pretty much everything ourselves in-house. And so it's been a long but fun last 6 or 7 months to a place now where we kind of consult larger scale brands who are venturing into this Web3 world about how to think about Web3, and then help them implement tech stacks that can actually engage mainstream users with the benefits of digital asset ownership. It's kind of my, the exact thing I was hoping to see as a long time buyer of Ethereum, right? It's like, okay, people are starting to take this seriously. Now when you ask a CXO at any major company what their Web3 strategy is, it's not a question that makes them laugh. It's a question that makes them sweat. And so exciting times.
Honestly, I've been really surprised that a lot of these large enterprises and corporations have taken so long, because we in the blockchain world solve a lot of really hard problems for how to access and write data, coherently from many different sources. From a tech perspective, being able to present these concepts to an exec with a tech background and say, hey, listen, we have solutions to your really hard problems. They're really into that, up to the point where you say, crypto, because of the bumpy ride that the Web3 space has had the past few years, many outside the space look at stuff like, NFTs, blockchain, crypto, etc., and they think scam. But the truth is that there's a lot of potential benefits for those skeptics in using these cutting edge technologies. Can you talk a little bit about how we can effectively drive adoption to enterprises and larger companies?
That is all I think about all day long, right? Especially in the business of, the core of what we're doing, right? It's to make any developer easily able to build on any blockchain and any coding language and any tech stack that's familiar to them, right? Think about like Stripe for the blockchain. And so part of that is like, why is it actually useful to build on the blockchain, and how do we tell that story? My assumption is, heretofore the mainstream has only come to know blockchain and via cryptocurrency because it has been so complicated to develop anything over here for any developer that the only reason anyone would do it would be immediate financial motive, right? Immediate profit motive. And so, just to set context, I think what we've seen, the only use case for blockchain that the mainstream has been aware of so far is blockchain as a financial instrument, blockchain as a way to commoditize, let's say, hot air. And so, part of my job and part of what I'm at least trying to do for some of these enterprises is no, like, how do we rethink from first principles what this tech is actually good for, right? And tell the story in a different way. And so I think that the two pieces of this that are resonating most with the folks that I'm talking to are, on one hand, this concept of digital asset ownership, right? Like, now you as a brand, or you as a company, or you as, let's say, a hotel chain, can give your customers something tangible, that's digital, that engages them and marries them to your brand altruistically and for free, right? It's not something to sell, it's something to give away as a means of better identifying and better forming a relationship with the top 10% of your customers that produce 50+% of your revenue. And that's mostly on the B2C side, right? I think the beauty of that particular implementation is that whatever you're giving away is useful outside of your tech stack, right? It's not bound in a Web2 database to be useful. It can transcend different pieces of technology. You can form community with it. You can lever your customers to do to engage in behaviors that you want by giving these things away, right? And then on the other side, I see blockchain as being very useful in removing friction from inefficient markets, right? And so, in a lot of cases, it becomes a chicken and egg problem where it's like, big corporations should be thinking about this, but reality is big corporations are just composed of a lot of individuals like me at Amazon Web Services, where it is just this, like, how do I climb the corporate ladder effectively? I'm not looking to make waves. And so it's telling this story at a high enough level that it appears eminently useful as, let's say, an executive driven initiative, right? Something that affects the bottom line of an enterprise when it's implemented. And so I think that's when we start to see mainstreaming or enterprise adoption is when it becomes so easy to build and engage with, and enterprises can use their existing developers with their existing skill sets to build on the blockchain. And then the outcome for them building on the blockchain over here becomes so obviously value added that it's difficult to ignore, right? Like, this is early and we're due to put out a case study, but one of the things we're seeing is that when brands lever NFTs or digital assets, or digital collectibles, as they're starting to refer to them as, to engage with their consumers, they're seeing a 3 to 4% uplift on the amount of revenue that they're producing just giving NFTs away from the top 10% of their customers that they're engaging with, right? Like, what I've been suggesting that brands do is put earning digital assets on a mountain and let your users climb that mountain, and that way whoever gets them are your best customers. And I think it's starting to be seen as eminently useful, but it's still early days. And I think the uphill battle we have is that, like, being composed of individuals means that most enterprises who would think about something like this are afraid of some other arm of the enterprise that would go implement it for them, right? So in the scenario where blockchain gets leveraged in digital loyalty, you have a marketing department that wants to outsource that entire function because they're afraid to talk to IT. And so that's another mountain for us to climb. But I think it's on the way, right? Like, I think that mainstream adoption is coming because now the story has been told well enough, and it's just a matter of helping these enterprises think through how to implement these things. And what we'll start to see is these implementations where there's no mention of Web3 or blockchain. Likewise, in Web2, it was never called Web2. No one's ever really talked about the tech that underlies a Google search, right? It's just something that happened. I think that's when the mainstreaming of it starts to happen, is when it's just used for what its benefits are without any regard for what it's actually called or what the tech is doing. So I'm excited about that. Definitely feel lucky to be playing at least some small part in helping push this forward.
And scammers, and both are actively trying to leverage or act as, with the public directly exposed to a fully unregulated ecosystem that has both, really great projects in it and scammers, and both are actively trying to, leverage or access users' funds for their individual purposes. My question is, how do we in the ecosystem, who are really trying to produce technologies that are excellent, that we want people to use, convince them that, we're the good guys?
Right. I mean, that's a good question. I almost think it's less good actors being able to stand aside via messaging from bad actors, right? And more the holistic level of trust that the public is able to have in the technology being up-leveled through better technology, right? Like, I think one of the things that we're working on, due for release in another 6-12 months is like we built an invisible wallet, right, for brands to onboard mainstream consumers via OAuth, right, email, Gmail, Facebook. And part of what we'll do there is pull that wallet into a browser, and we're leveraging this agent AI to scan the contents of transactions that are getting signed to provide let's say, normie friendly TLDR of what in the world they're engaging with, right? And so I think, like, as the technology improves and as it becomes more friendly and easy to use, and this chance of you signing your wallet contents or your life away to some random malicious protocol gets slimmer and slimmer relative to technology's ability to advance, then I think it'll be easier for a mainstream person to come in and consider this world, when it's not just wall-to-wall headlines about this bridge got hacked, this person got hacked, yada yada. And then I think on the other side, it's like these mainstream I don't know, I think one of the things we're seeing over the last few months is, like, probably we need to rethink from first principles how to design a bridge, since that's where hundreds of millions of dollars and terrible headlines have come out of. But past that, I think as the technology improves, right, it just becomes more difficult, I think, to be a bad actor, and as a bad actor, you have to be a lot smarter. You know, so I think, like, I mean, part of the bad taste that the public has in its mouth about blockchain is that it's been married conceptually to cryptocurrency, right? And that's obvious. And I don't know that we as a space can ever rely on the mainstream media to completely faithfully report on what in the world is going on over here, when to some extent new technology, new means of engaging with brands on the internet, new means of monetizing attention means something scary to those folks, right? And so, I think it's incumbent upon us to make things safer, make the tech better, and then sing the message of what we're actually up to here louder than they can release bad news.
How can you help developers and companies design and implement Web3 strategies that drive revenue?
Yeah, really good question. So I mean, this goes back to this point where marketing is afraid of IT at most of these large enterprises, right? They're not necessarily the most cohesive, especially in this distributed world, right? Like, people, most enterprises are just made up of fragmented people who have to know that they're either getting their business or getting themselves a win internally in order to move forward on implementing something like a Web3 digital loyalty program, right? For us, right, it's lowering the barrier to entry for those enterprises to think about this, right, and offering them a way to abdicate and outsource blame, and also responsibility, and also any win associated with implementing Web3. So the way we engage with, let's use like a Jack in the Box as an example, or something like that, is we work directly with marketing to say, how should you be thinking about Web3? And what we're saying, at least what I'm saying, is don't sell the NFTs, right? Don't pull a CNN where you're selling the NFTs and giving them away to people who are expecting an arbitrage opportunity as a way to raise capital. Think about NFTs as a way to more deeply engage the best customers of yours who are liable to go engage in the actions that you stipulate allow them to earn the NFTs, right? Like, put them on the top of a mountain, let your best customers climb the mountain, and that way, whoever goes and gets those NFTs, right, whoever goes and earns them relative to their engagement with your brand, right, their visitation of the stores in person, their purchases online, right, those are people who care about your brand. Those are your best customers, and for all intents and purposes, your ultimate customer focus group. And so that's the first point that I'm making, is don't sell them, just let your customers earn them and give them away in exchange for behaviors that you want to drive. Once you've given them away, right, you have this subset of people who are particularly engaged with your brand, right, who love you more than anybody else, who visit your store often, who buy online often, right? And so you can think about the NFTs, because they're not locked in your tech stack, like you mentioned in the beginning, they're transposable across tech stacks, as a way to coalesce that community of your best customers inside of other pieces of technology, like Discord, like mailing lists, like gated access areas on websites, right? And then, once you've coalesced that community of folks who've earned the NFTs, who you know who they are, and you, by virtue of that, know what their wallet contents are, you can think about the NFTs as a way to create the world's best customer focus group, build a community out of the best and most loyal customers of yours, and then offer them discounts, right? Benefits, right? More engagement with your brand in exchange for their loyalty. And so that's how I'm talking to most enterprises who face mainstream customers about driving extra revenue with NFTs. I think the most interesting implementation that we're seeing so far is in travel. Folks starting to think about selling tickets, bookings, things like that in advance as NFTs, and then instead of facilitating cancellations, they're facilitating the secondary market for whatever they're selling. And this could be tickets to a sporting event just as well as it could be a booking on a plane. But then you as a company, you're not having to think about facilitating a cancellation, and likewise, you're able to reach into the secondary market for whatever you've sold initially, and abstract out a royalty fee for facilitating that secondary market, so it doesn't become a black box anymore. And I think that that's a majorly value-added use case, and so I think we'll start to see people move on that.
From a marketer's perspective, that's a really interesting take, because what you're actually talking about is providing value to your user base in a way that is transparent and accessible from a tech perspective. I know that some of those tools exist today, but are, kind of black box, like you said, and having it in a more open network with open protocols benefits, both the marketers and the users, right?
Definitely. And I mean, definitely, right. It's, and if you make it transparent and you let, I mean, the real value of a digital asset is what? It's authenticity and it's scarcity, right? Like when previously you couldn't have that for anything on the internet, now you can have authenticity, a guarantee, and guaranteed scarcity. And so if you're deploying scarcity and authenticity in a way that engages people to your brand, right, it's better than just, selling them, at least is my opinion. And it is more value added than anything you can do in Web2, because then everybody can know who's earned what and who is your best customer and what they're receiving as a result of that. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you can think about it like a membership that you can resell afterwards.
Right, exactly. And I'm due to do more case studies on this with some of the brands that we're working with today, and obviously that requires things to move forward. But we're seeing a meaningful uplift in revenue as it pertains to the top 10% of the customers that engage with these digital collectibles, right? If you're, but never mind the fact that corporations have historically, instead of fostering community, paid millions of dollars for customer focus groups, right? Folks who implement these digital assets, digital collectibles in a way that's actually friendly to a mainstream user are seeing an uplift in their revenue relative to the folks who are actually going and earning them. And so I think that being able to for us to be able to tell that story cohesively and loudly, right, it's sort of a forcing function, right? Like, especially in a down market, to show how this actually is more useful and more value added, because the only language that a corporation speaks is money, right? At the end of the day, it's the aggregate of all these people. It's the language that resonates with them as a collective most. And so
next, I wanted to cover tools and tooling, because when you're talking about developers, that's what we care about. When we go to build stuff, we care about what tools we use, and we're very passionate about them. I wanted to get your take on what you think the impact of no-code, low-code tooling will be on the adoption of blockchain tech in the coming years.
Really good question. Yeah, I think so low code and no code means more NFTs, right? More digital assets, more implementations. It means that there's less scarcity in regards to the technology itself, such that the only useful implementations will be the ones that shine through, right? Like you call back to 2021 and like the NFT heyday. Basically, anyone who minted anything would mint out just by virtue of the fact that there weren't very many people who could create NFTs, right? And so I think as we push forward on the low code and no code front, and that's an area that we're tackling too. HTML embeds for WordPress for NFT marketplaces and NFT mints, and basically every piece of utility that an NFT collection would want to offer. That is an area where we're dedicating resources, just because the thought is, like, especially as in my opinion, NFT marketplaces have been somewhat parasitic to the collections themselves, and are continuing to move that direction. And so it probably makes sense that most of these collections will in-house the facilitating of trading of their NFTs. But as we progress, right, it's like in the abstract, low code, no code means NFTs become more ubiquitous, which means that by virtue of their ubiquity, people give less of a shit that things are NFTs, and that NFTs are NFTs, right? And it's more like, what does the NFT do? How is it implemented, right? And why is it actually useful? And it's kind of ends up a forcing function, this ubiquity on people to create things that are actually valuable, right? For brands, as opposed to just releasing an NFT, it means you have to tie something to that NFT that makes people want to go earn it or have it. Same as, anybody can print a drawing of a character on a card, but only Pokemon cards are valuable. It's the same principle, right? As the tech becomes more freely accessible, then implementations that are more valuable have to shine through. I think it's really cool. It's like, it's good and it's bad. Most of what does Gary Vee say? I think that's kind of a platitude, because it's obvious to arrive at it, but 99% of what exists today dies, and what takes its place are things that are actually useful. So exciting.
Yeah, one of the things that I insist on at Ultra is that we talk about not the technology, like not the NFTs, but the benefits that it brings to our users. The things that our uniques can do for our users.
Right. What's in it for me? And it's a good question, right? Because it's weird. It's weird. The audience that we've had for the last year or two, as these things have broken their way into the mainstream, I have largely been, by my estimation, folks who rotated into this sector from like GameStop and AMC last year, looking for the next 1,000x arbitrage opportunity. And while NFTs were good for an arbitrage opportunity while they were still scarce, as they become more ubiquitous, it will become more. It'll only be about, what does it do for me, right? That's a good thing. It's a really good thing, because it means that, and especially in a macro sense, I think, historically speaking, last few years, the entire space has been predicated by, arbitrage opportunities and a lot of VC funding, and a lot of, I would say needless tokens, where there are no real business models underlying a lot of these things. And I think that a bear market and the pressure therein for companies to create models that are actually sustainable, right, that actually drive revenue, is very important, because in order to drive revenue, you have to solve a problem for somebody, right? That's, it ends up being that capitalism to some extent works out altruistically, right? In that in order to earn money, you have to go solve a problem. And so as more projects, more technologies in this space have to start to think about actually solving problems as a way to earn money, I think, it pushes us that much further forward. It's like, what are you useful for? Not just being an NFT and you're useful by virtue of that fact. That's going to go away.
When we talk about NFTs, we really need to talk about utility, because it's that utility that gives meaningful functionality, which is key.
Yeah, exactly. My favorite, especially, I think three types of NFT projects in their current sense survive, right? I think the ones that are successful at building Web2 brands that are expansive, right? They use the bootstrap funding that they got from this very weird time where royalty fees still existed, and everything that was created, minted out, right? To create sort of, let's say, Supreme-esque online, digital, and physical brands like Artifact and Azuki. I think those ones survive. I think the ones that build successful, expansive games survive, just because gaming is an area that ends up self-sustaining if you're really, really good at it. And then I think, ones that offer utility, right? Gated access to exclusivity. I think that's, by my measure, at least what survives out of this.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting that during the next market cycle, we'll see some excellent projects which hold all of those features in them. I'm really hoping that they're going to be prominently displayed and promoted by Ultra.
Yeah. I mean, the board, the Yuga guys are doing a really good job at this, but probably more like that will crop up. And Pat said, I think it'll be Web2 brands starting to look more like NFT projects I think the future of brand engagement does involve building community. I think if anything, if Web3 has shown these brands anything, it's like originating out of a community ends up more valuable to a brand than originating out of just purely B2C marketing, right? You move forward faster, you get more feedback faster, you're able to iterate faster if you have, a captive audience who you are captive to, right? Telling you what they like and don't like all day long.
Nicolas, I really wanted to take a moment to thank you for your time and your expertise.
Thank you, sir. This has been a really pleasurable conversation, and would be happy to come back anytime. This has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate your insightful questions.